Welcome to Trekosophy, the Star Trek Philosophy Podcast, Episode 20, November 18th, 2012. Joining us this evening, he has assumed command of the ship as the captain is emotionally compromised. It's Chris McGee.
Good evening.
And a guy who will give you any vaccination whether you need it or not, Brandon Kirby.
I got nothing left but my bones.
And I am Bill Allen, a.k.a. the guy in the red shirt. And tonight, we're going to be talking about the new Star Trek film. Well, the latest Star Trek film, since there's probably going to be a new one just around the corner. We might mention that, too.
You could probably say, and tonight we're going to talk about Star Trek. Well, the unimaginatively titled J.J. Abrams film from 2009.
See, and I'm very glad he did a good job making the movie because he, don't waste time thinking about a title if you've got a bad product. Great box, bad product. Instead, he got a simple box with a great product inside.
And that actually gets us started then because being the basically a reboot movie, there are fans on both sides of the fence, loving it or hating it. It's very unusual to find someone who doesn't feel one way or the other.
Well, there is that one guy in Omaha who hasn't seen it yet.
Oh, I forgot about him. Well, he's not listening to the podcast anyway. So.
Right. Oh, by the way, this will be probably spoiler heavy, so if you haven't seen the movie, rent it and then come back and watch this, because it's been 3 years, folks. I think it's safe for us to mention a few plot points.
I usually go by the 1 year rule. If the movie has been publicly available for 1 year or more, you can give spoilers. People don't need that long.
Well,
I do
the thing.
1 year after DVD release, yeah.
If we're talking about the philosophy of something, I think there's a presupposition that you've seen it, and it's your own fault if you start reading.
Okay, so if you haven't seen the film, press stop on your player now. Okay.
All right.
If you're with us, congratulations.
All right, so we should start with the basic review type thing. I guess Brandon earlier in our little pre-show said he didn't like the movie, apparently.
Oh,
I'd like to hazard a guess as to why.
Well, when you say review type, did you want to review the pros and cons, or do a basic review of the plot first?
Plot?
Oh, a basic review of the plot?
Bill, why don't you do that? Because I think you're the self-professed expert of...
oh, righty.
I'm a self-professed ignoramus of the film, so I've only seen it twice, but...
Okay. This was meant to be a prequel movie to predate the events of the original series. It opens up with a scene of Captain Kirk being born and Spock being born. Has a few little snippets of their childhood growing up to explain their personalities. And then shows a young, rebellious Captain Kirk, or just Jim Kirk at that point, enlisting in Starfleet. And while at the Academy, under the expert tutelage of Captain Pike, he ends up on the Enterprise and then in command of the Enterprise, and slowly but surely puts together the crew that will later become famous and has to save the galaxy from the menace of a time-traveling Romulan psychopath bent on destroying all planets in the Federation.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good summation.
Sure.
Right. It doesn't, it only touches on the time-traveling part, but yes.
Well, I mean, the time travel was not a major element of this film. It was sort of.
It depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, it was a hook. It was a part of it, but this wasn't a movie about time travel. This was a movie about. This was a movie about a rookie crew coming together, finding their strengths and weaknesses, and becoming the crew of legend.
Right. And I think a prequel. I don't know. I think it was an interesting concept, but I did think that it lacked creativity. Maybe to do something a little bit unorthodox, because I know, Bill, you were talking about just sort of trying to predict what I was going to say, but maybe its lack of creativity might not be the first criticism people have. Or am I wrong about that? Do other people criticize it for that too?
No, actually, most people complain about the changes made from the original. That's what I was going to go with. You didn't like. I was going to guess one. It was just a general dislike of the reboot phenomenon that is just wrecking so many movies. Mm-hmm. Or two, the massive continuity changes that altered the original history of the classic series.
Right. Well,
the fact that it's not
definitely
creative
will have to touch
is
on
surprising. That. Yeah, the fact that you say it wasn't creative surprises me.
Well, it absolutely wasn't.
Here's where I think Kirby's coming from. I'll let you tell me whether or not I've got this right, Kirby. The whole going back in time, messing with history, that's been done to death. Is that what you're kind of... I mean, even as far back as City on the Edge of Forever. We've seen it all. It's not very imaginative.
Well, why don't I start by giving its good points from my perspective. Doing more people with honey than you do with vinegar. I'm not a Star Trek purist. I know Ben can come across that way, but I'm not. I don't think there's one set thing that Star Trek is, and anything that deviates from that has to be chastised. I don't think that at all. And secondly, I've always had that thought, okay, what if the timeline were utterly disrupted? What if in Enterprise, the Time Wars, what if there was a measure of success in disrupting Earth's timeline? Okay, well, how would this play out? So I've had those thoughts before. And the prequel, I've already given props to the prequel idea. I think it's a great idea in theory. I just don't think it played out well. In terms of lack of creativity, one, I don't think it was it necessary to go this route? Was it necessary to undo everything that we had seen with Star Trek? Couldn't they have been a little bit more creative and come up with a prequel that didn't totally undo it? That's my first question. Was it even necessary to do that?
Okay. You have other questions you want to add to that, or shall I go ahead and address your first question?
Well, we can address it one at a time.
Okay. Well, to address that first question then, was it necessary to disrupt the entire timeline that way and start new? No, I don't think it was necessary, but when you're bringing in an entirely new cast, an entirely new director to the franchise, you generally, and it may have been Abrams' idea, I don't know, but generally you don't want to tie them down to here's 30 years of 40 years almost actually of history of established storylines. You're going to have to work within these parameters. That's tying his hand. That's basically saying you can't deviate from this path.
Right.
Now, granted, he still could tell some really good stories within that framework.
Well, a painter's only got his canvas to work with. I mean, there are limits to creativity.
Yeah, but a painter could get a larger canvas if he wants more area to work with. He can work with one the size of a building if he wants to. But so that's basically what Abrams did. He decided, you know what, I don't want to be restricted. I don't want to be told I can't do this or I cannot do that. So he says, I'm just going to not, and this isn't addressing another part of your worries. It doesn't wipe clean the timeline. It doesn't basically say, okay, all that stuff never happened. All that you've seen for the past 40 years never happened. That's not true. I mean, are your DVDs now unwatchable of Deep Space Nine, Next Generation? No, you can watch those all day long, all you want. You don't have to watch them and sit there crying, saying it never happened. It never.
Yeah, but I do that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. It's just a television show. But anyway, so.
Oh.
Whoa! I'm sorry.
Whoa.
And there went our
just got real.
fans.
That just got. Chris, you made it real.
Oh dear, I'm sorry. Okay, so my point is, it's it's still acknowledged on Memory Alpha as the prime timeline now, and that whatever was started with Abrams' film is considered the, I don't know what they call it, the second timeline or something, the new timeline, I don't know. And we can still be fans of both universes, the prime universe and this new one, and say we like them both, or we only like one or the other. Doesn't matter.
I agree with you. I don't, break into tears every time I watch The Next Generation and they take a trip to Vulcan. Like, but it doesn't exist anymore. No, it's not like that at all. I watch The Next Generation. It's just whenever I watch the movie, I'm like, really? They ended all the fun stuff we did with Vulcan? No, I'm still a fan of The Next Generation. I'm just not a fan of the movie.
Okay. And now, I'll go ahead and preface anything else I say by saying that I'm not a fan of this new film. I don't love it to death, but I also don't hate it. I like it for what it was. It was a good popcorn action flick. I think there were a few too many lens flares, but other than that, it was an enjoyable film for what it was. Of course, the inner Trekkie inside of me rages against that and says, no, I can't believe they did this. But I have to temper that with basically what I just said earlier.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Maybe I should draw out the thought that it was unimaginative. That I don't think it was necessary to undo so much. But going beyond that, I'm sure you've both heard the criticism that it's an old story. The desert chase scene, the motorbike versus Luke Skywalker's vehicle, an old man at a bar telling the hero about his father, going for training, a bar fight scene, destroying a planet is the cause of danger, they receive a medal at the end. It's identical to Star Wars. The movie is itself identical to the first Star Wars.
I think they come from the same source material in the fact that Star Wars was a fairly unoriginal, contrived, cliched plot in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even the scenes, though, I mean, the way the plot unfolds, it's not just that the plot is itself derivative. Of course, Star Wars is derivative. It's that the way it plays out is so similar. There's these videos on YouTube that will play scenes back to back, and it's amazing how much they stole from it. Now, I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm a Star Trek fan. I just don't like the lack of anything new.
Never really thought of that.
I mean, the parallels are unbelievable. It's if you just do a search Star Trek, Star Wars ripoff or copy or something like that, you can watch 10 minutes of just back-to-back footage where the scenes and the dialogue and everything's it's the same. It's the
same.
Same.
Well, I wouldn't go quite that far. There are a few differences. I mean, trying to think what the best way of saying this is. There's Scotty. There's the scenes with the giant death drill. They figured out what was going on with the super dead weapon pretty quick and didn't so much get captured by the bad guys as attack the bad guys. There was plenty of that unique Trek style put on top of what was
for
roughly.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things. The quest always starts in a tavern. That's a cliche going all the way back. So
yes, and the desert, not just a tavern, not just the bar fight that ensues, but the old man there telling him about his father. It's just.
See, yeah, but I mean, the difference is Skywalker knew nothing about his father, whereas Kirk knew about his father, and Obi-Wan was telling him, "Oh, your father was a great guy," in order to tell him about his father. Pike was doing it in order to try to inspire Kirk to be a great captain.
Well, wasn't that why Obi-Wan was telling Luke, your father was a Jedi, this sort of thing, and that.
Well, I don't know. In Obi-Wan's case, he really did fit more the wise old wizard category, and basically every wise old wizard always lies and manipulates and twists things. Pike was playing it straight. Obi-Wan had an angle.
Well, yeah, I suppose. And he even said that almost verbatim. What I told you was true from a certain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, yeah,
They're
from a
all
certain
so shady. Wizards are always shady.
Wizards are shady.
Which is why I always play a wizard in a D&D campaign.
It's like Gandalf. Okay, Gandalf bugs me. The two towers. They're walking through the mountains. Well, we could cut through this hidden cave, or we can cross the mountains. We cross the mountains, we might get frostbite. We cut through the cave, we save time and money. They all look to the wizard, and he says, "Hey, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just a guide and advisor." And then they get in there, and it's like, oh yeah, there's this giant fire demon in here. I kind of figured he was going to be in here. Isn't your guide and advisor supposed to kind of let you know about the possibility of running into a giant fire demon before you run into it?
Yeah.
Isn't that why you have a guide, to warn you of dangers?
That'd be one of the points to mention, for sure, on a travel guide.
Yeah, frostbite, lose a toe.
Yeah.
Yeah, fire demon, you're a snack. I mean, lose a toe, end up a snack for a fire demon. It's kind of like you need to give the important info out and not just, yeah, I knew that guy was going to be here. And you didn't say anything. Thanks a lot. But Pike was playing it straight. He was honest. It was, there's a lot of cliches with it. I tell you, the one part I will agree with you about being uncreative, though, since I'm going to be doing the pro side, I ought to throw some cons in there. The two things that disappointed me most, well, the one thing that was most disappointing was the Kobayashi Maru scene.
Oh, yeah.
That was disappointing. It seemed like it was nothing in the movie.
Yeah, I mean...
They feel like, well, you have to have this scene in the movie somewhere. Let's just shoehorn it in.
And I mean, the important part was the interaction at the inquest afterwards, the first confrontation between Kirk and Spock and their different philosophies and outlooks. But... So they had to get to that scene, but I mean, a little bit of thought and effort, because Kirk, he's got more style and panache. Even this Kirk had more style and panache, and yet he just, he got caught. It was so blatant. I mean, it wasn't a Kirk-style cheat.
No, it wasn't. A Kirk-style cheat makes you respect him. That was just, really?
Yeah, it was. They didn't try very hard with it, and it disappointed me. The other thing they didn't try very hard with, and I admit I wasn't expecting much, but the death of the red shirt.
I like that.
Okay, you're going to have to remind me where it was, because I have not seen the film since it was in theaters 3 years ago.
Well,
all right. They've confronted the Romulans, and the Romulans have said, Captain Pike, come over in a shuttlecraft or we'll kill your ship. And so Captain Pike puts together a special away team to infiltrate the laser drill. The team consists of Kirk, Sulu, and generic crewman number 2. Now, which one of these 3 guys is not coming back from that drill?
Engineer number 2.
Yeah. So you knew he was going to die before the bomb got set off. You knew it was going to happen, and you're looking forward to it, and then it's just, yeah, I'm too overeager and twitchy, and I'm going to not open my parachute and then die when I open it too late. It's like, now why is he the guy carrying the explosives? A guy that twitchy and neurotic, you don't give him explosives, you give him decaf.
So again, is it one of those things they felt like they had to have in the film somewhere? They just had to shoehorn it in? Fan service, kind of.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you were going to have it anyway. It's a crisis situation. They're fighting somebody. They're outmanned. They're outgunned. They're outclevered. You're going to have extra crewmen die. That was the whole point of red shirts in the first place. It was to show the drama and danger of space. People
you object to the way he died.
Yeah, it's like, it was just, even in the old days of bad writing, the red shirts' deaths were usually a little bit more, I don't know, pragmatic, sensible. The reason they died is they're dealing with something unknown. But we fairly well know if you don't open your chute in time, bad things will happen.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, here's where I disagree. And I guess Bill and I are bad protagonists and antagonists in terms of the film, or pros and con deliverers. Because I actually like that scene. And the reason why I like the scene was how much value I place on repetition, especially in storytelling. It's something C.S. Lewis said when he was talking about the value of epic poetry. People tend to think of it as boring because it doesn't have these patches of ebullient delight, he called them. It just seems to repeat itself ad nauseum at times, and you want it to stop. And he said, but sometimes when you're so accustomed to it, it becomes desired, it becomes expected, like a turkey and plum pudding at Christmas time. It's not boring simply because it's so cliche. It's exciting because it's so cliche. And I was expecting this senseless death for a red shirt. Maybe we disagree about the deaths of the red shirt in the original series. To me, it just became the obvious generic thing. Sometimes they didn't even try. They just beamed them into outer space, and that was it. It became, I don't want to use the word boring, but it became the expectation that they were going to die the senseless death. And for that reason, I thought of that as repetitious and therefore exciting. I was excited when they picked the red shirt. I said, now here he goes.
No, I was too. It was just the actual death was, I mean, I get what you're saying and I agree with it. I mean, the fact that the term red shirt is a phrase in common parlance to represent the guy who has one line and dies is because of how overused it was in Star Trek and how it was a good gimmick for any kind of serious series. You're going to have people who die.
The Expendables.
You're going to have expendable actors designed to make things look rough. And that's where the red shirt came from. So yeah, I was looking forward to it because up to that point they had done fairly well with telling a story that was not just a retread. I mean, that was part of the reason why this reboot did appeal to me. They change a few things because look at the new Star Wars trilogy. Is there anybody who really cared about the last half hour of that film, Episode 3? At that point, you knew how it was going to play out. There were no surprises. There were no twists. There was no shocking revelations. The shocking revelations we got in the new trilogy were of the kind that made us realize that George Lucas needs to retire. Yeah, Darth Vader built C-3PO. There's a plot twist for you.
Well, I don't know. I've always thought of Darth Vader's turn to Emperor Palpatine as one of the most epic moments of sci-fi history.
Until we actually see it on screen.
I thought it was brilliant. I thought the whole scene was brilliant, but maybe we should...
Yeah, save that for another one.
Yeah, we'll save that for the show. But I mean,
I agree with Bill. But anyway.
But I mean, I was just over anticipating the red shirt's death, like you say.
Well, you are the guy in the red shirt. I can see why you'd be a stickler for this sort of thing.
Hey,
that was represented well.
Yeah, my people were underrepresented in this film.
No, but to speak to your point about the last half an hour of Star Wars Episode 3, do we really need to see it because we already know what's going to happen? Well, you could say that about a lot of things. Almost every episode of Star Trek, the main cast is going to live. You already know how things are going to turn out for the best. It's usually going to be a happy ending, but it's the voyage, it's the way you get from point A to point B that makes it interesting to watch how they got to that point. And so, yeah, maybe in the last half an hour of Star Wars Episode 3, you knew what was eventually going to happen, but you might want to see it anyway just to see how they got to that point.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making any sense here.
No, it makes sense. I agree with you. It's just, I mean, in the Star Wars movies, they were telling this epic story, but it got to a point where they're like, Oh, look, we've got 20 minutes left in the movie. Let's wrap everything up now and call it quits. The ending seemed kind of they were doing, I mean, they weren't doing great telling the story, but they were doing better than at the end. Whereas in Star Trek, I mean, you knew how it was all going to end up, but they did a pretty good job putting all those pieces in place.
Right. I think I would want to compare it to the latest Batman film, and I don't know if spoilers are appropriate for it or not.
I don't care. I've heard enough about it to know.
Yeah, it's all over the internet. I'll probably be watching it in a couple of weeks, but I've heard all the spoilers already, so.
Okay, well, I'll give you a basic plot then. I remember going to sit down in the theater, and before it had started, I had said to myself, no, I'm not a Batman or a comic book person. What I was expecting going in is that you would see this villain who would make you think he had defeated Batman and that everything was lost, and somehow there'd be this miraculous comeback and everything would be set right. And you had to have the sense that Gotham City was in danger. You had to have the sense that things could go awry. It just didn't look like it was going to pan out for him. And the movie makers had to make you believe that the bad guy had won and all hope was lost. And that's exactly what the movie was. It was exactly what I had expected, and I had loved it for that reason. Now, going in to see Star Trek, I never got the impression that all hope was lost. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting it to just lead into the Star Trek universe that I know and love. Instead, it totally reshaped it. It wasn't at all what I was thinking it would be when I sat down to watch it.
Did it really totally reshape it, though? That's the thing. I mean...
Well, they destroyed Vulcan, and they put Spock and Uhura together. There's quite a bit...
Okay, the Spock-Uhura thing,
Romulus,
yeah,
too.
that...
As messed up as that is, as this will reveal what a geek I am, I was really upset about Romulus being destroyed. I was upset for what they did to the Romulan species, because I'd always thought of them as this mysterious, espionage, so much potential, so many places you could go with them. I thought of them as intellectuals, and then all of a sudden, they weren't able to come up with it. Their best scientists had to rely on a Federation diplomat to try to save the day and failed miserably. I didn't buy that. That's not what I'd come to think of the Romulans as being. And then,
well, to be fair, it wasn't just any old diplomat. It was the diplomat who was probably the best scientist in the galaxy. I mean, we're talking Spock here.
Well,
in a ship designed by Geordi LaForge. I mean...
Spock did once say Mr. Scott's knowledge of physics far exceeds my own. So I don't think that there wouldn't have been anyone on Romulus who would have foreseen what was going to happen to their son. I didn't buy it.
Well,
and I didn't.
The bad news is Vulcan's gone. The good news is Romulus is not gone yet, and now the Federation's got 300 years of advanced warning.
I suppose that's true. Who knows what's going to happen?
And joining us now, we just beamed him in while traveling at warp speed from the ice planet he was hanging out on. It's Ben McLean.
Bill and I have basically tried to take on the role of Bill's the defender of the Star Trek film, and I'm the critic of the Star Trek film.
Oh.
But we've sort of been doing 50-50, where Bill says what he likes and doesn't like about it, and I've been saying what I like and what I don't like about it. Bill,
well, I haven't got to all the stuff I like yet. When it comes to the final split, it's probably like 90-10 pro.
90-10 pro, okay.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with the timeline disruption. Bill, not so much. Bill didn't like... Go ahead.
I'm with Bill on that one. The timeline disruption was really stupid.
Well,
Bill didn't like the Kobayashi Maru and the red shirt. They thought they weren't done. They missed the potential of what those scenes had to be.
Yeah, the rest of this, and that's I think that word right there, potential. That's what I liked overall about the movie. So the places where they missed so hard. I mean, Actually, for the whole altered timeline thing, I understand why they did that. That was basically so that when they make future movies, this is an alternate timeline. Anything could happen. A main character could die. They're trying to.
like that's going to happen.
We all know it's not on an intellectual level, but if they do it right, and these are well-loved characters by the fans. I mean, you might not like Chris Pine, but you like Kirk. And so you care about these characters if you're a Trekker. If you're a Trekkie, you care about. And so if he can, even in the back of your mind, make you think something could happen. I mean, we know Spock died in movie 2. Maybe Spock dies in this movie too.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek's got a precedent of killing off main characters. Tasha died, Dax died, Kes went away.
Well, look, we knew Okay,
Trip died. I mean, it's.
I never liked Tasha, and we all knew that the Trill lady from the first episode was going to get replaced at some point.
No, we didn't.
No. Yeah, we did. We did.
You did, maybe. We didn't.
I didn't. I remember watching it live when it came out, and they said one of the Deep Space Nine characters won't survive the next episode. I had no idea who it was going to be.
Well, you didn't know it was going to be Dax right then, but you knew that there was a plan from the beginning of the show that you're going to have a switch up because they said what Trills do, and you never are given. You are hardly ever given superfluous information in a narrative.
Kirby didn't know that.
If there is a gun on the mantelpiece in Act 1, someone will use it to shoot somebody in Act 2.
Okay, so Ben, what you're saying is you have a better grasp on narrative storytelling than we do.
Maybe.
No,
and you
because...
and for the record, you would have had that when you were 8 years old.
Oh, that's true. I wasn't watching it when I was 8. I was watching it in college, so...
Yeah, and let's I mean, part of it might have been somebody revealed a spoiler ahead of time to you, because in this case, Chekhov's gun applies, but the Trill information received was not so much about the bullet still in the gun. It was about the shell casings that had already been fired. That was where the character development was going to come in, was this host looking at her past relative to the others. You knew there were going to be stories about that.
And there were.
I think they wanted to keep her. The only reason why they wrote her off is because the actress wanted to leave.
Okay, well, Deep Space Nine aside.
We're talking about
what was Chekhov's gun in the movie?
Hey, guys, I found it. Interestingly enough, this rule is called Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chekhov's gun is a metaphor for dramatic principle concerning simplicity and foreshadowing. It suggests that if one shows a loaded gun on stage in the first act of a play, it should be fired in a later act. Otherwise, the gun should not be shown in the first place.
Unless it's a red herring, which is another literary device.
You can do that to mislead an audience. You certainly can.
Yeah, but I don't think something shown in the first episode like that was going to be a red herring. I mean, anyway, about the movies. I don't like how it connected to the old movies. I mean, I really felt like I don't feel any more confident than I was before that none of the really important characters are going to die. I guess. Well, I don't know. They might write something where Scotty dies. That'd be interesting.
See, anyway, now they could kill the new Chekhov, and I'd be okay with that. Not to make any kind of pun on Chekhov's gun, but yeah,
they're not. They're not killing Kirk, Spock, or McCoy in the next movie unless they're going to bring them back in a future movie they're planning.
Yeah, I mean, we know that on an intellectual level, but it's the attempt to connect with the audience and make you have some concern for the characters while things are going on, because they make more prequels.
If you're figuring that out, if you're figuring out that a new timeline means no one can die, then you're already thinking about it on an intellectual level, and you might as well go the whole way.
What about suspension of disbelief?
This new timeline thing did not help my suspension of disbelief at all. It really didn't. Sorry. Didn't work. I really think the movie would have been better without Leonard Nimoy in it, or with Leonard Nimoy written more on character. It really feels like it wiped out everything that happened in the later Star Trek shows, and that just seems really dumb.
Now, wait, why? Let's look at this. Why do you think Nimoy was out of character?
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, I'd have to go on a scene by scene basis, but one thing is just that he's perfectly okay with Vulcan being blown up in the new timeline instead of trying to use time travel to fix it. And that just doesn't make any sense. He might have been a little zen, but he was never that zen. That was.
I think part of the problem was you couldn't tell he was emotionally. His voice was cracking when he talked about seeing his planet destroyed, but given his advanced years, his voice was always cracking. So I think that might have been what was throwing that off, because he did care. He pointed out he cared, but at the same time,
well, it's not so much that he didn't
if
care.
Kirk was alive,
he didn't do anything to fix it. And we know from previous movies
he was marooned on a
Yeah.
planet, on the moon or whatever. How could he have gone back in time?
There was nothing he could have done. What he did was save his other planet.
End of the movie.
What he did was go back and save his other planet. He saved Earth. He did so by going to the one guy who could do the impossible, and that's Kirk.
Well, if they open the next movie with Nimoy going back in time to save Vulcan, then everything would be fixed, I guess. But
I agree.
He knows the time travel. He knows the time travel formulas, and as long as he's in universe, it doesn't make any sense that he doesn't use them for this.
Well,
this would definitely be the time he would use them, given his decisions in previous movies and how they worked out.
Yeah, but at the same time, previous movies involving time travel have usually ended. Half the time they've ended badly. The only time it really worked out well was when they were saving the whales.
Well,
yeah, so go back in time to save whales, but not to save a whole planet. Okay.
He saved Earth.
Yeah. Okay, so it's okay to use time travel to save Earth, but it's not okay to use time travel to save Vulcan. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I really think if you re-edited the movie to take Leonard Nimoy and the time travel subplot completely out, you'd have a better movie. In fact, it'd be a great Star Trek movie. It was great without that. That was the biggest problem with it. I mean, I really liked the rest of it. I liked the new actors. I liked the ridiculous sword fight on the outside of the ship.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those points I'm kind of iffy on.
I was going to bring that up too. Is Sulu and the big sword fight?
Have a little fun. That was fun.
You talk about characters not performing to spec. I mean, Sulu is into fencing, not.
Well, the new Sulu maybe is.
He said fencing when he said, "What kind of combat training is it you have?" Fencing, because he's still Sulu, and yet his idea of fencing is apparently kendo.
What's kendo? I don't even know.
That's the Japanese sword style. One of them.
Okay.
And Ben, your thoughts on the Spock Uhura romance?
Shoot, I don't even remember.
That's where we were when you jumped in here.
Oh, sorry. I don't even remember that being in the movie.
What was there?
Go watch it again.
Yeah, I probably need to. I only watched it like once in the theater.
Yeah, you were with me there.
The next movie, what will be in the sequel?
Actually, I don't think we got to all of Bill's points on why he...
Yeah, that's true. Bill, why did you like the movie?
Well, first of all, for reasons I like the movie, number one, to tie in with how the cast performance is great, Carl Urban as McCoy.
Yeah, he was great.
Phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And all joking aside, the fact that you had Simon Pegg as Scotty and what's his name, Harold Cho as Sulu, two guys who have done really well with comedy, and there's always been a little bit of an element to comedy. Those are two guys who could pull off the camp factor but still do the emotional stuff when needed, and they gave great performances even though they weren't exact clones of their original counterpart the way Carl Urban was as McCoy.
Well, he wasn't an exact clone even then. I mean, he was a whole lot younger than McCoy in the show ever was, which we kind of, but I don't know.
Well, they were all younger because this was supposed to take place sometime before the events of the original series. So they were all younger, but he was still older than the rest of them.
Wasn't it funny when the Doctor was chasing the Captain Kirk around in the trying to give him a shot?
Yes.
And I was like, they never ran that fast in the original series.
They probably ripped those very delicate suits they were wearing too, if they did.
Yeah, that was great.
But
you know what? One thing they managed to do in the special effects department that was interesting was they were able to make the ships feel fast, like they were like right before they go into warp. The way they kind of had them like quivering a little bit, like they're about to just, really take off. That old Star Trek shows never did that, and I thought that was a lot cooler. Made the whole warp thing a lot more convincing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm not a connoisseur of movies, so I couldn't say much about the acting, but I do say I will say the feel that they gave it was original series-esque, but it looked much more real. There was it was more genuine, I thought.
Yeah.
It was more believable. I'll put it like that. When I watch TOS, it just doesn't seem believable that it'll ever come to that. But watching the movie, I said, okay, actually, no, I see that. But it still felt like that's TOS.
That's part of that's part of the reason this was successful and why I consider it a success, because what J.J. Abrams was able to do was retain the campy part that we like for nostalgia purposes, but get rid of some of the campy, cheesy parts that just are in place because it was produced in the 1960s.
Right.
I mean,
that works. That's
you're
a good
not
point.
going to have plastic foam rubber rocks. You're going to have, paper mache rocks that look more realistic. Or
tapes that look like building blocks.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, he's going to make things, add a layer of realism to kind of get rid of the stuff that just pulls you out of it and say, man, this was so hokey and cheesy. I mean, they had stuff to beat this by the 1970s, and this is supposed to be 100 years in the future. They couldn't guess better. I mean, I know they have to make it look close to what people expect to see so that people understand what's going on in a show like that, but
yes.
You go back and watch some of the old stuff, and you had the good camp that we all love, like Red Shirts, like, your Alien of the Week. Kirk gets his shirt ripped off fighting some alien, the women, These are the elements we like, even though they are kind of campy and hokey and repetitive and have become cliches. But then there's that stuff that's just really bad.
Like Mud. Like Harry Mudd. That whole character. Yeah, you're saying that would be like an example of the stuff from the series that we'll probably never see in the movies.
I don't know.
I think there's a lot of potential with a Harry Mudd character.
I mean, look at what if you want to think about it, Deep Space Nine, that was basically, I'm surprised we didn't see Harry Mudd III on that show, because Quark's is the kind of place where a Harry Mudd type would hang out, and Quark is himself a Harry Mudd kind of character.
Exactly.
Sure, sort of, kind of. But he was involved in a lot of the camp, though, and you were saying that you didn't want to get rid of that. So,
but he was part of the good camp. I mean,
okay, what was the bad camp if he was the good camp? I don't even know.
Well, I mean, not maybe he wasn't good, but I mean, there's the good camp. The stuff that we know is cheesy and goofy, but we remember it fondly. Some of us do anyway. Bad camp is stuff like just the discontinuity in the writing from one episode to another. At first, Kirk's a laid-back, easygoing, cool guy, and in the next one, he's Captain Bligh on a 3-day revenge cruise. There was a little bit of since you had so many different writers.
Yeah, he had kind of schizophrenia there with multiple personality disorder, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, we talked about that too.
And it was just how he was written. I mean, you say Kirk's got to crack down, Shatner gives you a performance of Kirk cracking down, and you see him crack down. He's got to show his sensitive side. We'll show his sensitive side.
But he looks in the mirror and he's like, "Which Captain Kirk am I going to be today?"
Yeah. And it's individually an episode is great, but overall, it does take away some from the quality of the show. With the other series, is they did better with that internal continuity and carrying things forward. You can randomly pull out a dozen episodes of Star Trek and say, I've never seen these episodes, and it doesn't really change anything in the original series. You haven't missed anything significant.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, they didn't have story arcs in shows back then, hardly ever.
I mean, well, even without story arcs, there was this ignoring of characters. It was just, there was almost, in a lot of ways, they were generic templates. And you could have had it be a variety show with a different crew each week, and it could have been the new Twilight Zone, the new Outer Limits, and it would have been the same kind of thing.
In fact, that's something they ought to do. I think we've discussed that before, is that they ought to explore that in a Star Trek show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did, I think. Kirby, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up about the movie?
There was something that I thought was so offensive, and you guys might want to, roast me for this. I literally light the fire. But I was offended when I saw something on my Facebook recently, and it was some prominent musician. I don't know who, and I can't remember. But he was upset over the fact that he could put his heart and his soul into a song and put so much of his mental abilities and his musical talents and his gifts into something. And then he puts it up for sale, and it's sold for the same price as a fart app, 99 cents. And there's something so wrong about that. And he was complaining about it. And I was offended by that as a philosopher, because I knew, studying my philosophy degree, that it's not marketable. I can't put my heart, my soul, and my mind into an essay and just expect to be paid for it the same way this guy just expects to be paid for his work. Because to me, art is determined by the laws of supply and demand. And I think this new, for better or for worse, in philosophy, I think it's worse. It was Peter Kraft, Ben, who said in Philosophy 101, philosophers are intellectual prostitutes, academic philosophers.
He said academic philosophers. He didn't say everybody.
Yeah, academic philosophers.
I think he goes a little bit far there.
Maybe just a tad bit. But there seems to be something, if you're really into Socrates, that philosophy gets cheapened when you add money to the equation. I don't think money and philosophy mix that well. And money and art, do they mix well? Do they not mix well? This new Star Trek movie was made to be popular rather than, in my opinion, a good Star Trek movie. I think it was made to appeal to an audience outside of this traditional Star Trek fans.
I do have to agree with that.
Sure.
And because it's having to conform to the laws of supply and demand, I don't think that it's as good as it could have been. I think they have those constraints in mind when they're trying to tell the story.
Well, they might have tried to overreach themselves in trying to reach out to whole new fans. I think a new television show would probably go a lot further in that direction than a new television show that stays true to the formula would probably go a lot further than a movie in that direction, because I don't think a lot of the people who got picked up by this movie who don't watch the Star Trek shows and watched this movie are going to be sold on Star Trek in general in the future. They might go see another movie, but I don't see them putting a high priority on it. You know what I mean? I mean, nobody's in suspense from this movie, for example. Nobody's just dying to see what these characters will do next. And that.
But at the same time, it was not a critical failure because they've already greenlit and they've pretty much finished the sequel. So
yeah, it wasn't a failure. Yeah, it was a success, but it was a very moderate, safe kind of thing. I don't know. It was kind of. I can see Brandon's point, but at the same time, they didn't leave the traditional fans in the ditch either. They had a lot of in-jokey stuff going on, and
I felt ditched, but I drew that out before you came, and I don't want to bore anyone who might be listening. So maybe.
Okay. Well, I feel kind of like they're missing a huge opportunity to get Star Trek back on television because I think it would be phenomenally successful on television right now, especially. Lots of people are rediscovering Star Trek through Netflix and Hulu and that stuff.
And to be fair, a lot of them are discovering or rediscovering it because of the new movie. And let's face it, this new movie is not going to hurt the chances of a TV series.
No, it's not. No, I'm saying it's good. I just think they if they really want to lock in another generation of fans, they need a new TV show. Just the Abrams movies aren't going to do it.
I'm willing to bet. My prediction is that the Abrams films will be a trilogy, more or less. And once that trilogy is completed or close to being completed, that's when we'll start seeing talk of a new television show.
Depending on what Disney does, I agree with Chris, because I think that's going to really...
Trilogies seem to be the thing now, you know.
Trilogies are the thing.
Yeah.
But what Disney ends up doing with the Avengers is going to make a big difference with what CBS does with Star Trek. Because like Chris says, I see them doing these movies as a trilogy and then producing a new Trek series. Maybe it'll be Michael Dorn's project. Maybe it'll be something from our list if they're listening.
Nobody's listening to us.
Not yet, but we've still got 4 years until they get to the third movie. So, or, okay, 2.5, 3. Because you figure he's going to do the next Star Trek movie, and then he'll do an in-between project, and then he'll do the part 3.
Yeah.
But anyway, what Disney has planned for Marvel is, while they also have all of their sequels to their various franchises, there's going to be a Captain America, there's going to be a Thor, there's going to be, well, there already is an Iron Man sequel.
And there's going to be a Deadpool.
I'm not sure if the Deadpool movie is going to work.
They're doing it. I'm telling you, they're doing it. It's in production. I mean,
I know
let Bill finish his thought.
But with this Avengers franchise they're building, part of the things on the slate is they've already begun production or have set the works in motion to create a live-action television series that is Avengers-esque. My guess is they're going to be introducing some of the second-string Avengers like Vision, Black Panther, the characters that were on the team but nobody really cared about enough to give their own movie to. That way you can have a few more supporting people in the next big movie if they do well. So now Joss Whedon has his fingers in all these different pies.
Yeah. I was wrong. Deadpool never made it to production. They're redoing the script again. Oh, shoot.
That's because they lost Ryan Reynolds to Green Lantern, but since that one got canned, who knows what'll happen next with that.
Well, they've got Ryan Reynolds again, apparently. So.
Yeah. But if Disney Marvel can pull off this live-action series coupled with all the feature film productions, it's going to increase the potential that the studio types would like a Star Trek series live action to either relate to what goes on in the movies or just to bring Star Trek back to television. But the success of the movies coupled with the success of what this other franchise does is going to determine what happens next. It's like DC's trying the opposite approach that Marvel tried, and we'll have to see how that plays out.
All right. Well, do we have any final closing thoughts on the Star Trek film?
Not from Kirby.
Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its new, rebooted, continued mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go back to where Trek belongs, while still boldly going where no one has gone before. And cue music.
I was going to say, do you think we'll ever see a Next Generation type film?
I think they're done with those.
Yeah.
You don't? No. I mean, do with the Next Generation what Abrams movies have done with the original series.
Oh, I see.
Get a new bald guy.
Maybe, but I think it's going to be like a 20 or 30 year gap before they get to that point. I mean,
yeah, because Next Generation is still. I mean, they're just bringing out the Blu-rays of it right now.
And the last Next Generation movie came out in the last decade, so it's not like
They'll probably wait a little while.
remake.
It's just a crazy idea.
Yeah, it would be. Well, it would be more of a reboot than a remake, and that's when you start getting into trouble. I mean, look what they did with Spider-Man.
Well, let's not get back into superhero territory again.
Yeah.
Do you want to sign us off here then, Bill?
Sure. Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Trekosophy. Be sure to check out our website, trekosophy.com. Follow us on Facebook, on Twitter. We do have a Twitter, right? Somebody's been tweeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I should probably start following our Twitter. I'm telling the audience to follow the Twitter. I'm going to start following the Twitter. Email us at trekosophy@gmail.com. Download us from iTunes, and please leave a review. We're always on the lookout for listener questions, feedback, suggestions, and join us next week as the host and I once again delve into matters Star Trek and philosophy. That'll be one of our April Fool's episodes.
I'm already confused. But that's not hard to do. So.
Deadpool!
That's not Marvel.
Yeah, it is.
No.
Deadpool is Marvel.
Wait, Deadpool is Marvel. I'm sorry. Who am I thinking of?
The 2009 Abrams Star Trek film. Love it or hate it?
Loved it.
Okay, so you love it. Kirby hates it. We got a podcast.
Yes, I am. God help us all. I'm in charge now. I need to work on my evil laugh.
We don't need his mouth breathing around right now.
Yeah, we'll have my mouth breathing to fill in the gap, that's for sure.
Mr. Bill. You can call me Mr. Kirby.
Oh no, that's not good. Definitely have to add that to the list.
I really don't think there is a unified philosophy of sci-fi.
Well, we'll have to make one then.
Wow, to think that I'm sane, that's novel.
Patience is a fruit of the spirit.
I watch my head movies. I make picture words.
I'm really bad at adding.
I should really think of something to say here. Because I'm going to sound like a total jackass.
Part of the story revolves around a worm that poops platinum.
Me doing anything technical is a blooper reel right there.
Although, sometimes I do feel like I'm a vegetable.
Oh, I got the times crossed.
As long as you don't cross the streams.